Good morning. Before we start, take a breath. I know the weight you're carrying right now, the syllabus that never seems to shrink, the answer sheets you second guess at 2 in the morning, and underneath all of it, the quiet pressure of an exam that can shape the rest of your working life. That pressure is real, and it is also exactly why we sit down together like this. This is the Sociology Desk, issue 59. Today we are working with two events: a farmer mobilization against a trade agreement, and the Caste Census rehearsal that just concluded across 16 states. Both of them are sitting right now on top of live sociological theory. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly which thinker to reach for and exactly how to write it for marks. Our first event is the Kisan Ghat Mahapanchayat. In a mobilization that has just unfolded, roughly 550 farmer and social organizations, under a coalition called the Desh Bachao Morcha, gathered in Delhi to protest the proposed trade agreement between India and the United States. Their fear is straightforward: that cheaper subsidized American dairy, grain, and meat will flood Indian markets. Now, if you write this in an answer as just a news event, you will get almost no marks. This sits in paper 2 under social movements in modern India, specifically peasants and farmers' movements. But the moment you attach the right theory to it, this becomes one of the strongest answers you can write. Here is the first concept you need. And you may be wondering how a Latin American theory from the 1960s applies to Indian farmers today. The theory is dependency theory, and the man behind it is A.G. Frank. Frank's argument was simple, but radical for its time. He said, poorer countries are not simply behind on some shared ladder of development, waiting their turn to catch up. Their underdevelopment is actively produced by their relationship with richer economies. He called this a metropolis and satellite structure, where the metropolis, the richer economy, draws surplus out of the satellite, the poorer one, again and again. Now place the trade agreement inside this frame. If Indian agriculture opens up to subsidized American produce, it does not simply compete on equal terms. It risks becoming a satellite market, absorbing someone else's surplus. That is the sentence you want in your answer, not a summary of the protest. The second concept explains why this protest does not look like the old peasant movements you may have read about. Gail Omvet studied farmer movements in India from the 1980s onward and noticed something changing. These were no longer single-party controlled agrarian unions fighting only over land and wages. They were coalitions, cutting across states and organizations, mobilizing around a peasant identity itself, against what she called the state's urban-biased terms of trade. The Desh Bachao Morcha, with its 550 constituent groups, fits this description precisely. If you can name this as a new social movement and explain why it is new, you are already ahead of most candidates who will simply call it a farmer protest. Let me give you one formulation you can safely reproduce in your answer, properly attributed. A.G. Frank argued in his book, Capitalism and Underdevelopment in Latin America, that the periphery does not lag behind the metropolis on some common developmental path. Its backwardness is the direct product of the very relation that enriches the center. Write that sentence, attribute it correctly, and an examiner immediately knows you have read beyond the coaching notes. Now let us talk marks, because this is where most of you lose points without realizing it. Picture two answer scripts on this exact question. The first script opens by describing the protest: who marched, which roads were blocked, how many unions joined. That script, even if well written, caps out around 14 out of 20. Why? Because it treats the event as the topic, when the event is only ever supposed to be your evidence. Now picture the second script. It opens with a structural claim. Agrarian protest in a liberalizing economy reflects the peasantry's subordinate position in global circuits of accumulation. Then it names Frank's dependency theory precisely, brings in the protest in exactly one or two lines as proof, adds Onvet's new social movements as a second lens. And then, this is the part almost nobody does. It adds a counter voice. A.R. Desai reminds us that India's agrarian crisis also has domestic roots: land fragmentation, poor pricing, that exist independent of any trade deal. That single counterargument, plus a forward looking closing line about how the register of protest is shifting toward global integration, is what pushes a script from 14 to 18 or 19. The event is your evidence. The theory is always your destination. Say that to yourself every time you sit down to write. Here is a question in the exact style you should expect. In the light of the farmer mobilization against the proposed India-United States trade agreement, critically examine the relevance of dependency theory to understanding agrarian distress in a liberalizing economy. Pause this video if you want to and sketch your own 6-point structure before you move on. Our second event is bigger, and if you are serious about this examination, you cannot afford to be casual about it. The rehearsal for the second phase of Census 2027 has just concluded across 16 states and union territories. For the first time since 1931, India is preparing to count caste for its entire population, not just scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And the method chosen is what officials call an open column, a blank field where every respondent outside the notified scheduled caste and scheduled tribe lists writes down their own caste in their own words. This falls under Paper 2, Visions of Social Change in India, specifically Constitution, Law, and Social Change. Do not let anyone tell you this is only a current affairs topic. This is one of the richest theory questions available to you this year. Here is the concept that unlocks this entire topic. M.N. Srinivas drew a distinction between what he called the book view of caste, a fixed hierarchy recorded in texts, and the field view of caste, how it is actually lived, contested, and self-described by real people in a real village. Now here is why this matters today. The last major attempt to count caste, the socio-economic caste census of 2011, used a coded, prefixed list, a book view instrument, and it returned an unusable 46 lakh different caste names. The government called the result unreliable. The new open column is, in Srinivas's language, a field view instrument. It records caste exactly as the respondent says it, without forcing it into a pre-existing box. That single distinction, book view against field view, is worth an entire 20-mark answer on its own. Now bring in a second layer, because a top script never stops at one thinker. Dipankar Gupta argues that castes today function as discrete, bounded categories, competing with each other for resources and status, not as graded steps on one single ladder. This is exactly the assumption built into the open column. Since you can only enumerate castes as separate free text entries if you already believe they are separable units. But Louis Dumont, in Homo Hierarchicus, would push back hard. For Dumont, caste is a holistic system, one single ideology of pure and impure that ranks every group inside it. Bringing in Dumont as a counter to Gupta is precisely the kind of theoretical tension examiners reward. You are not just naming thinkers, you are making them argue with each other on the page. Here is your quotable formulation for this topic. M.N. Srinivas argued, in The Remembered Village, that the sociologist's book view of caste as a fixed, textually ordered hierarchy differs sharply from the field view of caste as it is actually lived and self described by people on the ground. Attribute it exactly like that: thinker, work, and idea, and you signal command of the subject in a single sentence. Let us do the examiner's lens again, because this is the single highest value thing I can teach you today. An average script on this topic will spend most of its words describing the census schedule: when phase 1 started, when phase 2 begins, how many states are covered. That script feels informed, but it scores around 14 out of 20 because it never actually does sociology. The top script, the one scoring 18 or 19, opens by calling the census what it actually is: a state technology of classification, converting a lived, ambiguous social category into an administrable, countable unit. It then brings in Srinivas's field view and book view precisely, uses the SECC 2011 failure and the current rehearsal in just 1 or 2 lines as evidence, brings in Gupta's discrete categories, adds Dumont as the counter voice, and closes by linking all of this to the real policy stakes: OBC subcategorization and the delimitation exercise that will follow. That closing link to consequence is what a mid level answer almost always forgets. Remember the refrain: the event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. Try this one. Compare and contrast M.N. Srinivas's field view of caste with Louis Dumont's holistic conception of caste in the light of the open column methodology piloted for Census 2027. Give yourself 25 minutes and write only the skeleton first, 6 bullet points, before you attempt full sentences. Let us lock in today in 5 points. 1. A.G. Frank's dependency theory explains the farmer protest as resistance to becoming a satellite economy. 2. Gail Omved's new social movements framework explains why this protest looks different from older, party-based agrarian unions. 3. M.N. Srinivas's field view against book view explains why the open column matters more than any other detail in the Census 2027 story. 4. Dipankar Gupta's discrete categories and Louis Dumont's holism give you a built-in comparative answer on caste. And 5. In every single answer, the current event is your evidence, named in 1 or 2 lines, and the theory is always where your marks actually live. That is issue 59. I know this preparation is long, and some days it will drain you more than it gives back. But the candidates who eventually top this list are rarely the ones with a single brilliant week. They are the ones who simply showed up again the next day and the day after that. So show up tomorrow too. If you would like the complete answer blocks, model answers, and flashcards behind everything we covered today, just leave your email in the comments or write to us at team@upscdesk.com and we will share the details. Take care of yourself today. I will see you in the next one.